My name is Cassidy Ward. I'm 28. And last week, my family decided the fastest way to fix me was to pay a stranger to throw me out on the street. 2 days after I got fired from my job, I was walking up the stairs to my little Denver apartment, balancing a cardboard box with my whole office life inside: coffee mug, fake plant, the sad farewell card nobody signed properly, when I saw my landlord waiting outside my door with a folder in his hands. He didn't even bother with small talk. He just held up the paper and said, "You've got 48 hours to move out." I actually laughed, because I thought it was some kind of sick joke. I told him my lease wasn't up for months. He shrugged like it wasn't his problem and said, almost apologetic, that my sister had wired him $1,000 to speed up the process, and that my parents told him they wanted me to hit rock bottom so I could finally grow up. I stood there in the hallway clutching that box while he explained how they'd already cleared it with the management company. The word homeless kept echoing in my head, and all I could think was, I just lost my job, and now I'm losing my home because my own family paid for it. I called my parents, hoping there was some horrible misunderstanding. They didn't deny a thing. They said a few days without a bed would build character, and that their house was only for people who were going somewhere. I hung up before they could dress that cruelty up as love. Then I opened my contacts and called my grandmother's lawyer instead. Less than 24 hours later, my phone exploded with calls and messages, panic, accusations, everyone suddenly acting like I was the monster. If you want to know how the broke, unemployed girl they tried to throw away ended up holding all the power, stay with me until the end. The first night, I told myself it was temporary. I stuffed what I could into the back of my beat-up sedan, shoved my workbox into the trunk, and drove around Denver until the streetlights blurred together. I ended up in a Walmart parking lot, parked under a flickering lamp, telling myself it was just for one night, just until I figured things out. Try sleeping in a car when your brain keeps replaying your landlord's voice saying, "Your sister paid me $1,000. Like it's the most normal sentence in the world. I woke up stiff and freezing to a security guard tapping on my window and a bright orange ticket tucked under my wiper for overnight parking. While I was sitting there, clutching that ticket, I opened our family group chat. The most recent messages weren't, "Hey, are you okay?" or "How are you holding up?" It was pictures of ski lifts and champagne glasses. They were planning a weekend trip to Vail, arguing over which resort had the better hot tubs. My sister sent a selfie with a caption about how we all need to push ourselves if we want a better life. And I almost laughed, because apparently push ourselves meant pay to make your little sister homeless. By noon, my car started making a noise I'd never heard before, a grinding rattle that matched the way my head felt. I drove to a side street, closed my eyes for just a second, and woke up to find my sedan hooked to the back of a tow truck. An old parking ticket I'd forgotten about, plus the new one meant they could tow it. The driver handed me a slip with a number on it and said, "You can pick it up when you've got the cash." The impound fee alone was more than half of what was left in my savings. I watched my last reliable thing in the world get dragged away and realized I had no apartment, no job, and now no car. So I walked. I walked until my feet ached, and my phone was at 15%, and I saw a Starbucks with a "now hiring" sign taped to the window. I went in, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and claimed a corner near an outlet like it was sacred ground. That was where I finally called my grandmother's lawyer back. Her name is Abigail Cho. She'd handled my grandmother Eleanor's estate years ago. When Abigail answered, I tried to sound normal, but my voice cracked halfway through explaining that my own parents and sister had coordinated to have me evicted within 48 hours. She was quiet for a long moment, then asked, "Cassidy, where are you living right now?" I stared at my half-empty cup. "Right now? Nowhere." Abigail sighed, The kind of sigh that told me she'd seen too many families do ugly things over money. Then she reminded me of something I'd somehow pushed to the back of my mind. My grandmother's house in Aurora, the one my parents had been living in for the last few years, was not their house. It was mine. Eleanor had left it to me because I was the one who stayed with her through chemo and oxygen tanks and bad nights. Abigail said I'd been the one paying the property taxes for the last 5 years, roughly $5,000 a year out of my not-so-impressive paycheck, because my parents were in a tight spot and promised they'd pay me back someday. They never did. Then Abigail dropped the part that made my coffee go cold. My mother, Susan, had used the house as collateral for a $50,000 business loan to expand their fancy wellness studio, signing paperwork as if she owned it. Legally, that's a problem, Abigail said, but it also means you're holding a lot more cards than you think. Sitting there in that noisy Starbucks, wearing the same clothes from the Walmart parking lot, I suddenly wasn't just the broke girl they'd tossed out. I was the legal owner of the roof over their heads and the collateral under their business. Abigail asked if I wanted to move forward with an eviction notice. I thought about my parents telling my landlord that homelessness would build character, and about that ski trip to Vail they were planning while I tried to figure out where to sleep. Yes, I said. Do it. Abigail told me she could file a 30-day notice and notify the bank about the ownership issue. I ended the call, looked out the window at people walking by with laptops and iced drinks, and felt something I hadn't felt since the day I got fired: control. They had paid to throw me onto the street, but they'd forgotten whose name was actually on the deed. And in less than a day, when the letters hit their mailbox, they were going to remember. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before 8 a.m. At first, I thought it was spam, but when I saw my dad's name, my mom's name, my sister Danielle, my brother Logan, all lighting up my screen one after another, I knew Abigail had done exactly what she promised. There were missed calls, voicemails, texts that started with, "Call me now," and "What the hell did you do?" and "You have gone too far." I ignored them. I sat in the same corner of the same Starbucks, nursing a refill and pretending to scroll job listings while my heart pounded. I lasted about 30 minutes before I saw them through the window, all four of them crossing the parking lot toward the door like an angry little parade. My dad, Martin, walked in first, jaw clenched. My mom, Susan, followed in big sunglasses like this was some kind of scandal she could hide from the neighbors. Danielle was right behind them, in an expensive jacket that probably cost more than what was left in my bank account. Logan came last, hands in his pockets, looking annoyed rather than worried. They didn't even ask if they could sit. They crowded around my table like I was on trial. "What did you do?" my dad hissed, keeping his voice just low enough not to cause a scene. I took a slow breath and said, "I enforced my rights." That's what I did. My mom slapped a stack of papers down on the table, the eviction notice Abigail had sent. "You're evicting us?" she whispered, like she couldn't believe the word. "From your grandmother's house? After everything we've done for you?" I stared at her. "Everything you've done for me? You mean paying my landlord to make me homeless 48 hours after I got fired?" Danielle rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Cassidy. Stop saying homeless like you're living under a bridge. You have options. You could have come to us for help if you were willing to actually change." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I did come to you. I asked if I could stay with you for a bit, remember? You told me your house was only for people who were going somewhere." My dad started to protest, talking about tough love and wake-up calls, and how sometimes you have to shock someone into getting their life together. I let him talk until he ran out of excuses. Then I said, "Let me make sure we're all clear here. Grandma Eleanor's house, the one you've been living in, the one with the nice backyard and the remodeled kitchen, that house is in my name. It has been in my name since the day she died. I've been paying the property taxes on it for 5 years. About $25,000, give or take. While you used it as a backdrop for your Christmas photos. My mom blinked, like she was trying to process the numbers. We told you we'd pay you back, she snapped. We've always said that. You've always said a lot of things, I replied. But when I lost my job and my home in the same week, the only thing you said was that a few days without a bed would build character. Danielle leaned forward. That still doesn't justify this, she said, tapping the eviction notice with a manicured nail. You're throwing your own parents out of their home. How do you think that makes you look? I shrugged. Probably about as bad as paying someone to throw your little sister out of hers. Then I dropped the part I knew would get their attention. And the bank already knows the house you used as collateral for that $50,000 loan doesn't legally belong to you. My dad went pale. My mom's hand flew to her chest. You told the bank? She whispered. Not yet, I said. Abigail notified them there's an ownership issue. They can do the math. You signed as if you owned the property. You didn't. That's on you. Logan finally spoke up. So what, Cass? You're going to tank Mom's business just to get revenge? I turned to him. No, I'm giving everyone a chance to deal with the mess they created. I'm not the one who lied on loan documents or paid a landlord to change locks behind my back. Danielle scoffed. You're acting like some kind of martyr because you paid a few taxes and signed your name on a form. A few taxes? I repeated. $25,000 is not a few taxes. And that form was me co-signing for your precious wellness studio, so you could offer cucumber water and fancy robes to women who wanted to post about self-care on Instagram. I saw her flinch when I added, just like I co-signed for my car, the one you convinced me to finance through your bank guy because it would help both our credit scores. Guess whose credit gets hit too, when I can't afford to pull it out of impound. For the first time that morning, Danielle shut up. My dad tried to pivot into negotiation mode. He offered to help me get back on my feet, maybe find me a job through one of his spa clients, if I would just cancel the eviction and stop stirring up trouble with the bank. My mom nodded quickly, switching to a softer tone, saying things like, "We made a mistake, but families work things out privately." I looked at the four of them and thought about sleeping in my car behind a Walmart, about staring at a tow truck taking away the last thing I owned with wheels while they debated ski-in, ski-out access in Vail. You wanted me to hit rock bottom, I said quietly. You wanted to teach me a lesson. Consider this me returning the favor. I'm not canceling anything. You have 30 days to figure out where you're going to live. And you're going to have to talk to your bank about how you put up a house you never owned. My dad's voice dropped even lower. You're going to regret this, Cassidy. You're tearing this family apart. I stood up, my legs shaking but my voice steady. No, I said. You ripped it apart the moment you decided I was disposable. I just finally stopped pretending I didn't notice. Then I picked up my coffee, walked past them, and left them sitting there in the middle of Starbucks, staring at the paperwork that proved this time I had the leverage. About 10 days later, when the initial shock of that Starbucks showdown had settled into a cold, steady anger, I got a text from an unknown number asking if we could talk about the loan situation. A minute later, another text came through. This is Tracy, your mom's business partner. I almost ignored it, but Abigail had warned me this might happen, that people who weren't in on the original cruelty would still get caught in the blast radius. So I agreed to meet her at a diner off Colfax, the kind of place with sticky menus and endless coffee refills. Tracy showed up in a blazer over yoga pants, the exact mix of polished and exhausted you'd expect from someone running a wellness studio. She slid into the booth across from me, wrapped her hands around her mug, and got straight to the point. Your lawyer contacted the bank, she said. They're reviewing the collateral on our loan. If they decide it's invalid because the house isn't in your parents' name, we could lose everything. The studio, the staff, all of it. I stirred a packet of sugar into my coffee just to have something to do with my hands. I didn't sign any papers saying that house belonged to them, I said. I signed as a co-borrower because my mom said it would help her qualify and she'd pay me back. She skipped the part where she pretended to own property that isn't hers. Tracy winced. I didn't know that, she said quietly. Susan told me it was their house. Family home, inherited, all of that. I never would have agreed if I'd known she wasn't on the title. Then she did exactly what I'd been afraid she'd do. She started talking about everybody else. The massage therapists who were single moms, the front desk girl trying to pay for community college, the older esthetician whose husband had medical bills. If this loan gets called in, Tracy said, those are the people who get hurt first. I swallowed hard because I'm not a monster, and the idea of strangers losing their jobs because my parents couldn't be honest made me feel sick. But then I remembered waking up to a tow truck dragging my car away while my family planned ski outfits. I get that it's messy, I said. I'm not asking the bank to shut you down. I'm asking them to look at the facts. My parents gambled with something that was never theirs and expected never to get called on it. That's not on me. Tracy nodded slowly, like she knew I was right and hated that it was true. Is there anything that would make you back off? She asked. Drop the eviction. Let the house stay tied to the loan. Give us time. I could have named a number, but that wasn't the point anymore. They paid a stranger to make me sleep in my car, I said. They stood by it and called it love. I'm done being the safety net for people who think I'm beneath them. She exhaled, folded her hands, and said, Then I guess we'll have to deal with the bank. 2 days after that, my mom texted me asking if we could meet, just the two of us. She picked a park near the house, like neutral territory. She was already on the bench when I got there, wrapped in a long coat, hair and makeup done like she was heading to a client instead of a conversation about how she'd helped make her child homeless. You look tired, she said, as if that was some kind of peace offering. Sleeping in other people's guest rooms will do that, I replied. It's not as restful as, sleeping in a house you've been secretly paying for 5 years. She flinched, then smoothed her expression. Cassidy, I came to apologize, she said. We went too far with the landlord. We just wanted to shake you up. You've been stuck. You're almost 30, and you're still in support roles, still living in a small apartment, still acting like it's fine to just coast. I actually laughed. I was making $55,000 a year, I said. I was paying my bills. I was paying your property taxes. How is that coasting? She sighed, looking out at the walking path instead of at me. Your sister is on track to clear 6 figures this year, she said. Logan got a raise and a bonus. When my friends ask how my kids are doing, it's easy to talk about them. Big titles, big numbers. And then they ask, and Cassidy? And I say, she's working in operations. And they smile like they're trying to be polite. There it was, naked and ugly, not concern for my life, but embarrassment over my LinkedIn. So, because my job doesn't impress your brunch group, you decided I needed to be humiliated into changing careers? I asked. We wanted you to want more, she shot back. You're smart. You could be running something, not just keeping other people's companies organized. We thought if you hit bottom, you'd finally be desperate enough to push yourself. You didn't push me, I said evenly. You shoved me out of my home with 48 hours notice, and you did it while sitting in a house that isn't yours, funded by a loan that shouldn't exist, that you got, partly because I signed my name and trusted you. She wiped under one eye carefully, making sure not to smudge her mascara. We have always supported you, she insisted. We paid for your college. We helped you after your breakup. You also called your own kid not going anywhere behind my back. I cut in. You told my landlord that homelessness would build character. You told me your house was for people who were going somewhere. That doesn't sound like support to me. That sounds like you're ashamed of me. She didn't deny it. Not out loud. She just said, "Your sister and brother have made sacrifices to get where they are. They hustle. They network. They play the game. You've always been—" She searched for a word and landed on comfortable. I was never comfortable, I said quietly. You just weren't paying attention. She reached for my hand, but I kept mine in my pockets. If you drop the eviction, she said softly, we can help you find something better. Danielle has connections. We can introduce you around, get you in somewhere with a real growth path. We can all move past this. It would have sounded tempting to the version of me from a month earlier, the one who still believed that if I worked hard enough, I'd eventually earn their respect. Now it just sounded like a business proposal. We'll invest in your image if you let us keep ours. You're only offering this because you're scared, I said. Scared of losing the house? Scared of the bank? Scared of what people will say when you have to move out of the perfect neighborhood? Her jaw tightened. We are scared, she admitted. But that doesn't mean we don't love you. Loving someone doesn't look like locking them out of their home right after they lose their job, I said. And it doesn't look like stealing their security to prop up your lifestyle. She blinked rapidly, then looked away. So that's it? She asked. You're really going to make your own parents leave their home? You're really going to put our business at risk? I'm going to stop letting you use my name and my money to build a life you keep telling me I don't deserve to share, I replied. What happens next is the consequence of choices you made long before I signed anything. She stood up, wrapping her coat tighter around herself. You're going to regret this someday, she said. I believed her, but not in the way she meant. As she walked back toward her car, I realized something had shifted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing her approval. I wasn't trying to be the kind of daughter she could brag about over mimosas. I was just someone drawing a line. And whether she liked it or not, the clock on those 30 days kept ticking. A few days after that park meeting with my mom, Danielle finally called me instead of just spamming the group chat. I was in a friend's spare bedroom scrolling job postings when her name lit up my screen. I answered, and she didn't even say hello. Do you have any idea how high the impound fees are now? She snapped. They're charging by the day, Cassidy. If that car gets auctioned, it tanks both our credit. I reminded her I'd already told everyone I couldn't afford to get the car out, not after losing my job and my apartment in the same week. She barreled on anyway. Here's the deal, she said. You tell your lawyer to chill. You pull back on this eviction nonsense. You tell the bank it was a misunderstanding and I'll cover the impound fees. I'll get the car out, we refinance. Figure it out. You stop blowing up our lives. I fix your mess. Win-win. I actually laughed. My mess, I said. You mean the car I only bought that way because you talked me into co-signing so it would help both our credit scores? The same way Mom used my house to get a $50,000 spa loan? She groaned like I was being dramatic. This is about being practical, she said. You're unemployed and couch surfing. We are offering you a way out. No, I told her. You're offering to buy my silence again. I'm not trading away the only leverage I have so you can keep living like nothing happened. There was a pause. Then her voice went icy. You're really willing to tank my credit over this? I'm willing to stop setting myself on fire to keep you warm, I said. She cursed at me and hung up. 2 days later, Logan texted asking if we could talk, without everyone else freaking out. We met at a mall food court, both of us with sad slices of pizza. He didn't waste time. Mom and Dad signed a lease, he said. Old 2-bedroom out in Aurora, thin walls, way more expensive than they're used to. They're stressed out of their minds. The spa's losing clients. The bank is sniffing around. Danielle's juggling 3 maxed out credit cards. This is bad, Cass. I shrugged. They wanted real consequences for bad choices, I said. They're getting them. He leaned in. What if there's a compromise? He asked. What if they stay in the house and pay you rent? Not full market, but like $1,500 a month. You get steady money, they get stability, the bank gets time, and we fix the paperwork quietly. No more drama. Market rent on that house is double that, I said. And this isn't about squeezing them. It's about the fact they only care when it hurts them. They didn't give me 30 days. They gave me 48 hours and a lecture. Logan rubbed his forehead. Not everything has to be revenge, he muttered. I thought about my last call with Abigail, how she'd explained that Mom hadn't just stretched the truth on the loan paperwork. She'd signed as if she and Dad owned the Aurora house outright, putting it up as their collateral alone. On paper, it looked a lot like fraud. The bank could call the loan due if they really wanted to, Abigail had said. We don't have to push that button yet. But your mother needs to understand it exists. That knowledge sat in my pocket like a loaded weapon I hadn't drawn. I'm not trying to nuke everyone's life, I told Logan, but I'm done shielding them from fallout while they call it tough love. They gambled with my stability and Grandma's house. This is just the bill coming due. He pushed his pizza away. They're scared, Cass. Mom doesn't sleep. Dad keeps running numbers. Danielle's fielding calls from creditors. You were always the one who held this family together. I thought you'd be the one to calm things down, not blow them up. I was the one everyone assumed would just take it, I said. That's different. When we stood to leave, he looked smaller somehow. You're not the only one who's going to remember this for the rest of their life, he said. Good, I answered. Maybe that means next time someone suggests paying to make a family member homeless, they'll think twice. As I walked away, my phone buzzed with a new email from Abigail. Subject line, bank response. I didn't open it yet. For once, I wasn't scrambling to put out their fire. I just kept walking, letting them sit with the heat they'd started. 3 days before their deadline, I finally opened Abigail's email. The bank had flagged my parents' spa loan for review, scheduled a meeting with them and Tracy, and strongly recommended they clear up who actually owned the Aurora house. Translation: fix this, or we start pulling threads. A couple days later, I borrowed a friend's car and drove out there. The quiet street looked the same, but my grandmother's house had a moving truck in front and the front door propped open. Inside, the place was chaos. Boxes everywhere, drawers yanked open, the life they'd built here being shoved into cardboard. My dad was sweating over a box of dishes. My mom was wrapping framed photos in newspaper. For a second, no one said anything. Then my dad straightened up and said, "You here to check your victory lap?" I told him I was there to see what they were doing with Grandma's things, the stuff that actually belonged to me. My mom snapped that everything in the house was theirs, that they'd made it a home. I reminded them it was my name on the deed, my money paying the taxes, my signature tied to the loan they'd gotten by pretending they owned the place. Danielle came clattering down the stairs with a box, hair in a messy knot, makeup smudged. The first thing out of her mouth was, "The car went to auction. They sold it for less than what was left on the loan. Both our scores tanked. I lost 100 points in a day because you wouldn't just let me pull it from impound." I told her mine dropped too, and the difference was I hadn't paid to put either of us in that position. Logan appeared in the hallway with a box of wires and old controllers and said the bank meeting had been a disaster. They hadn't called the loan yet, but they'd made it clear they could. Tracy was furious. The spa was shaky, and my parents were scrambling. That was when the guilt trip really started. My mom said I was destroying my own family. My dad asked if I could honestly live with myself, knowing I'd kicked my parents out of their home and put their business at risk. I thought about sleeping in my car behind a Walmart because of a check they'd written, about watching a tow truck drag away the last thing I owned with wheels while they argued about ski resorts. You gave me 48 hours, I said. You called it tough love. I gave you 30 days and a lawyer. I'm not the one who lied to a bank or hired a landlord to make my life implode. My dad's shoulders sagged like he'd finally run out of speeches. Fine, he muttered. You win. We'll be out by the end of the week. Hope the house feels good, knowing what you did to get it. I looked around at the walls, the scuffed floors, the place where I'd held my grandmother's hand through chemo. I didn't do anything to get it, I said. Grandma gave it to me. You're just finally being forced to stop pretending it was yours. My mom shoved a box of framed family photos toward my feet and asked if I wanted those too, since I was so determined to own everything. I told her to keep them. They were going to need something to remember this place by. Out in the driveway, the cold air hit my face while I watched the movers push furniture up the truck ramp, heard the hollow slam of drawers as they loaded a life that had never really belonged to them. The neighbors peeked through curtains the same way they would have if I'd been the one tossed out with my belongings on the lawn. A few weeks earlier, they'd wanted me to stand on a sidewalk and watch my entire world disappear in 48 hours. Now they were the ones walking past a moving truck with their lives in boxes, and for once, I wasn't the person being told that losing everything was for my own good. A month after the moving truck pulled away, I walked into my grandmother's house with my own key and my own boxes, and for the first time it actually felt like mine. No spa brochures on the counter, no diffusers humming in every room, no background tension about whether I was going anywhere. Just quiet floors, sunlight on the walls, and the knowledge that my name was the only one on the paperwork. In the weeks between, I'd landed a new job as an administrative specialist at a mid-sized tech company downtown. The pay was better than my last role, the benefits were real, and my manager talked about support and structure instead of rock bottom and wake-up calls. Abigail negotiated a deal where Tracy bought out my part of the spa loan for $35,000. It wasn't some fairy tale jackpot, but it changed everything for me. I paid off the remaining balance from the auctioned car, cleared a couple of smaller debts, and finally built an emergency fund so that losing a job would never again mean sleep in your car or call your parents and beg. One night, while I was unpacking my grandmother's old books in the living room, my phone buzzed with a text from my dad. He wrote that they were in a small apartment now. The walls were thin. The rent was high. The spa had lost a big client. Money was tight. Danielle was still dealing with trashed credit, and Logan was working longer hours to help them cover bills. Then he added, I still think you went too far, but I can't say we didn't have a part in this. It was the closest thing to responsibility I'd ever seen from him, and I still couldn't bring myself to text back, it's okay, because it wasn't. Instead, I walked through the house, touching the banister my grandmother used to grip, hearing her voice in my head telling me she was proud of me just for being there, not for what I could be bragged about. She never once tried to break me to make me better. My parents called what they did tough love, but I finally understood something important. Love that needs you to hit rock bottom in order to feel successful. As a parent isn't love, it's control. Family is everything only works when your family doesn't see you as expendable. Real family, by blood or by choice, are the people who answer your call at Starbucks, offer you a couch without a lecture, and don't need you to be in pieces to feel powerful. Setting boundaries with the people who raised you doesn't make you heartless. It makes you honest about what their version of love has cost you. I won't pretend there isn't a part of me that feels vindicated knowing they finally understand what real fear feels like when the roof over your head depends on someone else's decision. But the bigger part of me is just relieved that, when it mattered, I chose myself. If anyone ever tells you that you need to be broken to grow, remember this. Growth isn't what happens when people push you off a cliff and call it a lesson. It's what happens when you climb back up, decide where your lines are, and refuse to let anyone, family or not, shove you that close to the edge again.
Our team at Revenge Argon is dedicated to creating powerful, meaningful storylines that are purely fictional, designed only to inspire reflection and growth. We are committed to turning dramatic scenarios into positive lessons, offering viewers educational and emotionally thoughtful content rather than promoting real-life harm. The educational value of this script lies in how it highlights boundaries, self-respect, and the courage to stand up against toxic behavior, even within a family. It shows that true love is rooted in empathy and responsibility, not control or manipulation. Through this story, viewers gain valuable insight into protecting their mental well-being, recognizing unhealthy patterns, and choosing healthier relationships for their future.